Good evening and welcome to BoyleSports World Grand Prix Day 4. And what a weird, crazy session of darts we have just seen. And not only that, you've got a different presenter tonight as Dob is in Leicester watching the action. He will be back with you tomorrow. However, we have our resident World Grand Prix expert, it seems to be this week. Dan, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well. Yeah, very well. Another really good night of sort of enjoyable to watch darts tonight. Last night we saw some really high level stuff, and today we probably didn't see the blockbuster high level darts that we did last night, but definitely the twists and turns that make for a very entertaining evening of sport. It was a really interesting one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. Just a few people in the chat room. I'm sure a few more join us shortly. Tommy's said good evening. Daniel's mentioned the crowd, and HGV has mentioned the drama. And I think drama is probably a good word to sum up what's happened tonight, because we've had the last 16 trend of 3-2s continued for a while. We had another one at the end, obviously, and then there's only one down that hasn't ended 3-2. It's just been a mental session and mental last 16 in general, really, is, as we were just talking before with Tom, on a lot of unpredictable darts, I'd probably say, across the last 2 days down into the last 16. Dan, is that probably right before we go into the games?
Yeah, well, I was talking about it last night, and I want to use the same analogy this evening. Is that for those of you that watch lots of different sports, if you ever watch 2020 cricket, you'll see that they have the win predictor that comes up on the bottom, and it gradually moves across the screen depending on how likely something is to happen. I think if we'd have had a win predictor tonight, it would have constantly, in pretty much every game, bounced from one end of the screen to the other in quite extreme movements. It was there really was some twists and turns, and there was a few occasions tonight where I thought games were pretty much over with, and that in a way is the beauty of set play, is that all of a sudden you can look to be completely dominant, and then it can very quickly sort of come back on you, and all of a sudden you're level and having to really fight to stay in it, and that happened to a few players this evening.
Yeah, totally agree with you there, Dan. A few Weekly Dart has joined us as well, and mentioned there another late one. Of course, it's another late one. Grand Prix always produces late action, and a comment there from Tommy about schedule need looking at. Well, we don't have a similar sort of time tomorrow, you would expect, show, because we got 4 quarterfinals, same format. So we could have another late one if they are as tight as what the last 2 days has been. But let's go straight into game number 1, Dan, and Martin Lukeman versus Ross Smith. Martin Lukeman got over the line in this one. In a game that probably will go back to your predictor, which could have swung both ways at stages in this.
Yeah, and if I'm honest, boys, I sort of felt like that from the walk-ons. I got a real strong feeling when literally as the walk-ons happened, and as the players were throwing their sort of warm-up darts on stage, Ross Smith looked all business. He looked like he was there to, just get on with that game and dig in and win it. And it's maybe just his character, maybe just his personality, but Lukeman just sort of looked happy to be there. And certainly the way that Ross Smith started, on top of that, I thought this game was only going to go in one direction, and how wrong I was, because Lukeman just found a level at the right time, and again, I think set play can be a bit deceiving in that it doesn't always reflect who's playing the best. We talk a lot in when we're playing match play and we're looking at just at legs, is that you can see legs being won on the bounce, and you lose a bit of that perspective in set play as to where momentum's being built up. But again, I mean, Lukeman, I'll be really honest, surprised me a little bit tonight. I didn't predict him to win, not because of I didn't think he had the game. I just wasn't sure he could maintain it after last night, and I think he really showed he means business tonight, because he came from behind, and he was the second best player for a good portion of that match. and really dug in and showed that he's not here to mess about and that he's really making a career out of this.
Yeah, and it's easily forgotten that this is only his second TV tournament. His first one was the match play, and we saw that sort of depth to him at the match play. I tipped into that through the first round. I saw that as a potential shot. I was fortunate enough to watch Martin at the Champion of Champions the back end of August, and there's just something about him that is so watchable, whether it's what he's doing when he's got the darts in his hand and he's ready to release, or if he's at the back of the stage. There is something about his presence that it's so enjoyable to watch him. But I guess the flip side of that is looking at Ross Smith. Ross Smith coming into that and the draw, and Nathan's touched upon it as well. It's sort of no, probably neither of those expected to be playing Martin at this stage in the second round or the last night. And it looks like Martin's thriving on that, and Lukeman sees that as something that's actually lifting his game, and it's a bit of a no pressure. We've seen a few loose ones, but my God, he's double 16 hitting. It's reminding me of, if I'm thinking of a sort of a player who I didn't know much around how good he was on a double 16 until I think it was the World when we saw Ryan Joyce just relentlessly on.
Yeah,
no pun intended there, but relentlessly on that double 16. Martin Lukeman reminded me a lot of that today, because even when he was missing, he was just all around that bed. And it had such a big impact on that game, and it was shown in that final leg where, let's be honest, when he had 45 left in leg 4 and the miscount of going for single, free, double 16, thinking that he had 35 left, you could have easily lost your head, especially with the inexperience on stage. But for him to recover so well with that 112 start, for me, was the deciding factor in that final leg down.
That's where, and I made a few comments last night about because like last night was his first. I mean, we talked about just then how little time he's been playing on television. Last night was obviously his first win on television, and I was a bit. I wasn't sure how that would affect him. I wasn't sure, because it's very different once there is a bit of a level of expectation, but maybe he has sort of remained that feeling of still being the underdog. The pressure isn't on him. He is happy to be there. And I don't know whether that was key in him being able to recover. There are far more experienced players than him who've played an awful lot of time on the television that would have been really rattled by that miscount, and it would have took them some time to sort of reset after that. But he didn't seem to blink. He just almost seemed to sort of laugh it off and shrug it off. And even in his interview afterwards, he didn't seem phase. He didn't seem to be reflecting on it as a particular negative. And again, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But he did just seem to have a really, really relaxed attitude. And if he keeps that, and if he doesn't let the pressure get on top of it, he's going to go into his next game as the underdog without a shadow of a doubt. But if he can keep the level, if he can play the level of darts that he's kept so far, he's really competitive. And I think if you look at the jump that he's made, I think in 48 hours he's moved 16 places up the order of merit, and it's not going to take a huge amount for him to. I'm not saying we've had these conversations about who's going to be the next into this bit, but realistically over the next 6 months for him to solidify himself as a top 32 player, it could be on the cards. He really could. He's a player that we could start to see regularly on the television.
Yeah, you mentioned it there about the clip. We will hear from Martin now. We'll just come back to one of the points you mentioned there about that move in the rankings. Let's hear from Martin first.
One early on in set 4, did you forget that you were going for a double and throw for the 20?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And obviously the other one was the miscount. What was going through your mind at that point? And did you not hear Russ tell you what you had, or was it just a mind block?
No, I looked at Charlie was talking. I looked at it and I went, all right, I thought I had 45?
You had 45 left.
I thought I had, what did I go for, 10?
You went for a 3 to leave double 16, so you thought you had 35.
35, yeah, I don't know what happened there. I see the wife going.
Proper character, isn't he? And I think it's great. Like the more characters like that we have in the game, the better. The better the game is to watch. The better the game is for those that are even on the periphery and social media and everything else. I think he's a really, really good thing for darts that's happened this week. This run he's got on.
Yeah, and that probably sort of sums it up, that he forgot the moment that quick and how important that moment was. He's now that sort of Phil explaining what actually happened because he just forgot about it, zoned it out, and that then goes back to the character of what Martin is. And you mentioned there the move of 16 places, which puts him to 47th, I believe, in the current standings. Obviously, these are officially updated on Monday. But you look at his money, a lot of people sort of forget that this isn't his first year on the tour, that actually last year he just earned 9,500.
This is it.
He's earned more than that this week, Dan.
This is it. But also, you know, when I talk about, like, you look at 16 places moving up, you know, he'll move up more. He'll move up more places just as things happen. You know, just as other events happen, he'll move up places, even if he doesn't go particularly deep in them, because he's simply not defending anywhere near the money that a lot of the people in the 15 spots above him are. There, you know, the 15 spots above him are all defending a considerably higher amount of money than he is. And as that drops off, he will just continue to rise. And, you know, if he does another couple of little wins on television, and he's got a really good chance of grabbing himself a good spot going into next year.
Yeah, and just one more point on this, Dane, before we move on. I'm just going to leave the last point sort of on Ross Smith. Listening to you and Dob yesterday talking about all the potential top 16 players we have, and Ross Smith was in that conversation of names that you mentioned. For now, looking at this opportunity, how the draw opened up on this side, obviously you had Desi and Joe in there, but they were meeting each other, so there's only one left. Ross Smith moving away from this tournament, only reaching the second round. Huge disappointment for Smudger.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's gonna have to be. I think for those that know him and have watched him play, he was definitely a favourite tonight. You know, arguably he was Bookie's favourite, but, you know, I think for those that have watched a lot of darts and have watched him play a lot, he was a favourite. I think, the thing is it's another incident, I think, for him where he just hasn't played his best. He didn't play his best darts tonight, and that often has happened to him on television, and it's happened probably slightly too often for him. You know, we know his floor game's really, really good. You know, we've seen him win events, and we've sat and commentated on it, but he does just not seem to be able to reach his A game sometimes when it really matters on the television.
Yeah, in total agreement with you on that. Dob Father's in the chat room, and we have got a sue from him. He certainly had one too many.
Are we broadcast live on his train home? Is that where we're at the minute?
So I spoke to him this afternoon. There's not a train home. I know we got a couple of drivers in.
Well played.
Only Dob would get a couple of drivers. Most people just need the one. But there we go. Couple of drivers. But moving on to game number 2. Speaking about someone who was in the last 8 who we unexpected, Matters Razma. How many people had him there and came through for me? Probably the most impressive 2 sets of darts up until this point I've seen from anyone was Razma's first 2, and I thought he was just going to run away with it. And it's then not only in the last 8, but if someone was going to say there was going to be a player who would stop this 3-2 run of last 16 names, no one would have expected it to be Razma and do it in the style he did. But fair play to Matters.
Yeah, and he's an interesting. You know, we talked about Martin Lukeman as a character. I find him when I watch him on the television, I find him absolutely fascinating to watch. The way, I mean, I think the sporadic way that he throws darts around the board is bonkers. You know, you never quite know where. Certainly on this double in format, you never quite know where he's going to go next. The double 19 hitting is brilliant, and it's good to watch and makes it a bit more interesting. Even on the stage, like if you watch the guy as he's moving around after and before his throw, I kept thinking he was going to step off one side of the stage because he just seems to like he's really erratic in his movements, but then seems to settle himself quite well on the hockey. I think he's a fascinating player to watch, and again he probably. What he's done in the tournament and getting through this far will possibly be overshadowed a little bit because of Martin Lukeman doing similar. And I don't think he'll get the the airtime and the credit that he probably deserves. But he's a guy that we've seen do some fantastic things on the tour. And he's a really, really engaging and entertaining player to watch. And he has that. There's elements of his game, So when he hits those 171s, which he does as regularly as he hits a 180 often when he's playing on the tour, it's a really, really cool thing to see. I think it's great that he's gone through.
Yeah, I don't think there's many players who do the 19 routes as often, and it's not a 19 when we mention it. It's not a switch of 19s. It's
not even.
Let's just go for a 171 while I'm on 405 or something random in the middle of the lane.
We've seen him, how often on the tour have we seen him, start 501 at 19s like that? Sometimes I think it's, but I really buy into the fact that if that's what he's feeling. And that's what I think. He's a bit of a field player, and I think when he's feeling that the 19s are working for him, he sort of knows what's working. I think he knows his own game quite well, and he does. He hits it with it's not a counting thing. He sometimes hits the 19s when he should be going treble 20s because that's just where he feels comfortable at the time. But it certainly makes for a fascinating watch. I was highly. I think have we got a clip from him? Because I won't spoil it if we have.
We have, yeah, we have.
Oh, I won't spoil what amused me in that then.
We'll go to the clip shortly. Just before we go to that clip, just a word on Daryl Gurney, Dan, because I was speaking about him, I want to say last week on Live Lounge or the week before, of someone whose game, for me, is on the up. Not to the levels where he's been before. I didn't have him in contention to go on and win a TV title like we've seen him do. However, I saw his game on the up and expected him to be pushing in quarters and semis. And probably a similar question to what I asked about Ross Smith. Huge opportunity missed here for me for Daryl. Do you feel the same? But in addition to that, do you still think with the tournaments we have the back end of the season that we can see the Daryl Gurney game improve?
I'm not as sure as I was yesterday. I'm not writing him off completely and saying that he's not going to get back to. I think the difference with Daryl is that he has been there. He has won big titles and he has played an awful lot on the television and he's played in the Premier League. He's done, and everyone else that we're having the conversation about, other barring probably Adrian Lewis, they haven't been there before. They're all on the first time around almost. Yesterday I was really confident. I think like a lot of people were that we were seeing that Daryl Gurney back on the rise and he was on a real trajectory. I'm not sure where he goes from here. I'm not sure. I feel like it's a little bit back to the drawing board because I think a lot of the time now when he goes to a tournament, when he goes to the Worlds this year, it's a little bit of a fresh start for him. And that again, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I don't. He's not going in with any momentum. I don't think. I think any momentum he took from last night has gone tonight for Daryl.
Yeah, spot on. Let's hear from Matters Rasma as you are waiting to hear it once more, Dan. Let's go for it, and then we'll have a quick chat about it before we move on to Price and Cullen.
And now I have the new goal, to be top 32 before the World Championship, to be seeded and start from the second round. It's my goal, and it's good for me, I think, because I want to be better. Leicester, I book I book a hotel for just one night for Ryan Searle. Then, I book a hotel for 2 more nights and change the hotel. It's not the same, and tomorrow I have to change again. I don't know where I will be, but...
Dan, over to you, mate. Over to you.
Well, I'm going to tweet him if he wants to use my Hilton Honors account. I can give him a hand. I might be able to get him an upgrade or something. I might be able to see if I can make it. I'll drop him a tweet, and if he's stuck for a hotel, I'll see what I can do to help him out. No, I just thought, and I think there's a it's not so much a fairy tale. I don't want to say a fairy tale for somebody getting to the quarterfinals, but I just think there is something inherently cool and entertaining about a chap that's come along to a tournament. He's booked himself a hotel for a night. He's playing Ryan Searle in the first round, and he knows he's a heavy underdog. And now he's scrambling around for a hotel because he keeps winning darts matches, and he's going deep in a major. And I just think he's very cool. I think the way that he was, you could see the way he was talking about it, that he was. That he was excited and that he's here to play. And like we talked about him, like he's a dangerous player. He's not a gimme. He's not a walkover for anybody. And he's a really dangerous prospect in the tournament.
Yeah, he certainly is. And there's two ways to sort of look at it. Sometimes when you hear about a player just butting for one night, you sort of, some people can look at it as it's a negative view, and actually they've took it that I'm just down for the experience. I'll be home next day. But actually, it's the sort of freedom that he seems to have that I'll give it a go.
It's that relaxed. And
I'll find a place, all that sort of stuff. I'll find somewhere for another couple of nights. And it's that freedom for me. For someone who's not a regular, obviously, at the Grand Prix, for me, I think it's a very refreshing approach.
Absolutely.
Compared to some of the other ones we see. Just had a little smile because I've just seen a quote come through. It's not been released yet, but I've just seen a quote come through from the Nathan Aspinall clip, which we are going to hear when we talk about that game. And it is an absolutely torture. But before we go to that one, what a game!
Oh, this little one.
Yeah, before the Aspinall Noppert drama, Gerwyn Price versus Joe Cullen, and I had Joe Cullen to win to get through this tie. He was who I tipped to get to the final, and I expected him to beat Desi. But I spoke to Dob earlier and says the only way he beat him is by starting well. He did quite the opposite. Was 1-0 behind and then found a new lease of life after that break. Desi didn't start well, dropped off ridiculously. But my God, those two sets from Desi. I did say that Madas Razma's 2 sets to start the game was the best I've seen all week. That then was beaten straight away by Desi's last 2 sets.
Oh, just unreal. There is just we talk about players that have gears, and they can find another level, and they can find something special when they need it. Gezi for large portions of that match was not the better player tonight. In legs and in sets, but towards the end of that match, when it got to the business end, when that match needed to be won, he just managed. There was the first shout, the first Gezi scream of the night. I think that maybe he needed something to shout about, and once he did, he just seemed to start to find another level. And by the time you got into that last set, there wasn't a player on the planet that was going to beat him. Like that was absolutely superb darts from him towards the end of that game. He really is. We know his form hasn't been where he would like it to be of late. Still brilliant form for 99.9% of the rest of the world, but his form hasn't been exactly where he wants it to be. But I think moments like that, and the fact that he's able to find that game and that level will terrify people, not just in this tournament, but for everybody else that has their eye on that big tournament in a couple of months' time. This is not the time of year for Gerwyn Price to be doing things like that, is it? Yeah.
There we go. From the comments I've just flashed up on the screen, the words amazing, unbelievable. He's describing Desi, but it is for 2 sets. Because as we spoke about them first 3, just wasn't the price that we were expecting to see because of the form he showed recently. It was probably more the Premier League price than the price with more recent form.
Yeah, he looked.
That was summed up as where he's at the moment. That second leg, final set, 305, 6 darts,
171,
171, treble 18, tops, and that. Soon as that treble 18 went in, even probably before that, I thought this is not a very good chance. That treble 18 went in, I thought let's just go to leg 3 because that's done.
Yeah.
It was just so good. I think it was Wayne who was on Tom's who sort of said it as well, and it was just I think everyone watching just knew what was about to happen, because he was just free flowing at that time. It was unbelievable. Last 2 sets from Desi.
It just changed, didn't it? Like he for a good portion of that match, even when it started off, he looked beatable. No, he looked good. He didn't look dreadful, but he looked beatable. He looked like it would be possible to beat him. By the end of that game, he didn't look beatable in any way at all. He didn't look like it was possible to beat him. He just looked absolutely superb towards the end. It was really, really good stuff.
And Desi obviously fired in them 2 unbelievable sets, but from Joe Cullen's perspective, who can match it with the best in the world is always in the tour to go on and win a title. Can Joe actually look at this and go, well, Desi was too good? Or could Joe have actually, was it a missed opportunity in them first 3 and he needed to get that full sweep of 3 sets to
I think he'll be disappointed, because I think he, and the way I look at it is just there was a window of time where he had the opportunity to go on and win that game. You know, there was a little window where Gezi hadn't quite hit that amazing stuff that we saw to the end, and there was almost like a crossover period where there was a few unforced errors from Joe that almost fell hand in hand with Gezi being able to pick up the pace a little bit and find that extra gear. And I think if those sort of unforced errors hadn't come from Joe, he'd have put his foot down a little bit. Gezi, whilst he might have upped the game and upped the gear, it would have been too close to the end. You know, it would have been a bit too little, too late, I think. And I think the opportunity was there for Joe to go for a period of time. But then certainly once we'd hit set 4, that period of time had passed and he just didn't get another chance.
So let's move on and listen from Gerwyn Price.
Every tournament, you know, I'd love to go on and win the Worlds. That's the main thing for me. You know, my one eye is always on the Worlds coming up to this period of the calendar. But yeah, obviously, main job now is to try and defend this ranking money from 2 years ago. Well, I would say about 5, 6, 7 years time, because that's when I started to wind down. I mean, honestly, it's really tough. As many people say that, you know, you've got a life of luxury and you're on the road and you're traveling the world. It's a tough sport, and it is tough for traveling all the time and missing everything with your family and stuff. So yeah, over the next 5, 6, 7 years, I think I will improve, because I'm still an amateur in my eyes. You know, I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm nowhere near experienced as what half of these boys are. So, you know, give me another 2, 3, 4 years, then I'll be a way better player. And another 4 years after that, bye-bye.
So that is now Gerwyn Price calling himself an amateur after we've heard Michael van Gerwen being told mediocre in a week or in a few months where these two, along with Peter Wright, are throwing some phenomenal.
Well, I was going to say, if Gezi Price,
where is the game of darts going? If that's where they are at the moment.
If Gezi's an amateur and MVG is mediocre, is Peter Wright the only world class darts player we've got at the minute? Is he the only one left? Isn't you know? I dread to think what my darts is at, mate. If he's an amateur, I don't know what that classifies me as.
But his photos at the moment just seems on making sure he holds on to them ranking points, which is obviously money, which he's defending from 2 years ago. But probably more importantly for Price, it's getting his hands on some more silverware and getting himself in the best position for the Worlds. Those 2 sets and the draw, I know we keep alluding to it, this side of the draw surely puts him as hot favourite to be in that final on Sunday, Dan.
Oh, 100%. Like without a doubt. I've not looked at what the odds are yet, but I'm sure. You know, I'm sure the folks at BoyleSports won't be offering a particularly attractive offer for Gezi Price to get to the final. Now, I think it's going to take. Let's be honest, it's going to take a huge upset. It's going to take something that nobody's going to predict to happen for him to not get to the final. Now, I think certainly the way he's played it, if he keeps that up, he's got a bit of a chance in his next game to kick on from that and to build on it, and if he does, I think he's a very, very dangerous man in this tournament. So
moving on to the game that really offered very little, did it, Dan? There was nothing to it. It was just a nice, simple game of darts. We know. Oh no, sorry, wait there. It didn't. It had absolutely everything. It had it all.
It was, and again, it's another one where on the Dan Simpson win predictor scale, it was swinging backwards and forwards and upside down and back to front, and it was all over the place. I think I had a sort of reflecting at the end and having a bit of time to look at the stats for the game and to sort of think about how it played out. I think again, like set play can be really deceiving. If you look straight up, I mean, without boring, with stat, if you look straight at the stats for that game, Nathan Aspinall was by far the better player in a considerably better average. He threw considerably more 140s. He won the checkouts. His checkout percentage was better. His doubles in were better. With every metric by which we measure how a player has played, he was the better player. It looked for periods of time like he wasn't winning that match because it's set play and he was coming from behind to win. I think there was other. We know it got really, really tight, and it was really tight at the end. And that last set was very, very strange for a number of different reasons. But I think Nathan was the better player throughout, most of the match, and the result reflected that, I think, in the end.
Yeah, we'll move on to the fifth set. I've got a feeling, like says, I've seen the 12 button, yet to hear the clip. I'll be listening to it with you for the first time. I've got a feeling a lot of that clip will be focused on set 5. So just going back to the early parts of that game, Danny Noppert at 2-0 up. Dan, honestly, did you think... I thought by now we'd have had this show wrapped up because as much as you mentioned that Aspinall has got the better metrics throughout the game, and to be honest, at 2-0, it seemed a bit harsh. The missed opportunities, the double one from Noppert saved him in that set 1 after missing quite a few. But I know Aspinall's known as a fighter, but did anyone really see him coming back and winning that one at 3-2 at that stage?
I'm not convinced Nathan Aspinall did. Point, I'm certain Danny Noppert didn't, but I think, I just think it was, there were missed opportunities, from Noppert there. Again, he could have got through that. He had the chances, the multiple times could have really put the squeeze on, and we would have never got the drama that we did at the end. Thankfully for darts fans, he didn't, and we all got a bit more entertainment and drama out of the evening. I still worry, even though Nathan got through it, I still worry a little bit about him and the way that he gets through matches, and having to scrap like that to get through. And this is nothing at all against Danny Noppert. I think he's a great player, but having to scrap like that and come from behind, and if he meets a Gerwyn Price or a Peter Wright or an MVG at the minute in full flight, he's not going to be able to scrap like that. They're not games you can win by being scrappy. They're games where you have to meet the level, and you have to outscore, and you have to outdouble people. So I think he's been able to fight through today. I'm not sure how much more he can fight, in terms of going forwards.
Yeah, and just one of those to Jamie's point here that says Danny blew it, to be fair. One thing to look at then it's watching a game, seeing sort of stats and figures. Danny Noppert was 2-0 up twice. He was 2-0 up in sets to level it to 2 apiece. He was then 2-0 up in that final set. And from then that final set from that 2-0 point is where it got very, very interesting, because before that, at 2-0 Noppert, result aside, I was a bit worried with the re-gripping of Asp darts, because he stopped a few times to re-grip, and we saw this a few months back, but not so much recently. Then we saw the re-grip and then the crowd involvement, and when he went 2-1 up and turned around and shushed the crowd, I thought he's playing with fire here in the sense of what he was doing. We then had, I think, I'm just going to have a quick look then, then into the fourth lead, he missed his first 3 darts at a double. Asp hit it with the last one, but then Noppert hit it with the last one, sorry. And then Nathan Aspinall It's a 14 dart lead. That's including the 3 missed one. So 11 dart lead double start is just unbelievable darts under that pressure. 156, 123, 140, 82 out, and the 82 out bullseye clean as anything. Double 16.
And it is like, you know, he played some amazing stuff, but I don't think he's not at his best. You know, I think he knows that. You know, he knows that. I think he's still on the road to recovery from his injury. You know, he's still until quite recently been having to, you know, limit his practice time and things like that. And I think when I make the comments about you know, meeting a Gessie or a Peter, and you know, I know he's beaten all of those players before, more, you know, multiple times. I just think at the minute, you know, Aspinall did that, and he put that performance in because he was given the opportunity to. You know, Danny Noppert gave him the opportunity, and Danny Noppert missed darts to allow Nathan the opportunity to come back and do those amazing things. I'm not convinced at the minute that some of those top players will give him that opportunity. You know, he doesn't get that time to work his way around, you know, between moments of brilliance and cooling down a bit and going hot and cold. He needs to stay hot all the time.
Dan, I can't wait any longer. I'll sit here with popcorn sometime listening to. I'll sit here with popcorn sometime listening to Phil and Dob down at each other on an absolute argument. What I might do is grab that popcorn now for about a minute and 20 seconds, and listen to Nathan Aspinall.
Yeah, all that was going on, obviously it's a small crowd, so you hear a lot of things, and throughout the match, you know, when Danny was starting, you know, there was a few whistles, a few boos, so, you know, whether the camera picked that up or not, I was trying to hush the crowd, but likewise, like when I was doing it, you know, there was booing and whistling, and I think what it was is I pulled it back, and obviously the adrenaline's pumping, and when it was 2-1 down, as I'm about to throw to, you know, to make it 2-all, i.e. kicking off, there was a table all night that was supporting for Danny, and obviously, you know, they have their right to support for who they want, and it just basically got to the point where I had enough, and I turned around and I'm like, please, we should shut up, and it's not, you know, it wasn't just aimed at myself. You know, Danny had it early on in the game. With different people, with different personalities, different players, and I just reacted differently. You know, I shouldn't have reacted the way I did, but I did. You know, I can't take that back. But obviously, Danny wasn't happy with how I reacted, and he's seen his bum at the end. That's all I can say on that matter. But you know, he wished me all well after the game. You know, he shook my hand. I didn't think he would. So, you know, fair play. He's been a big man there. He shook my hand. You know, he's not going to be happy with that defeat. But you know, he was a big man tonight. You know, he took the defeat well. And you know, we walked up backstage and he said, "Feb, good luck in the next round." I said, "No hard feelings," and that's the end of the matter as far as I'm concerned.
I love the Asp. He always gives you something, but you don't very often. You sometimes see the shush or the reaction when a big jet out happened. You don't normally see someone as he's about to throw for the start of a lead, which he did the start of the fourth lead in the last set, turn around and visibly be saying something to the crowd. And right there, Raspy's telling us that he just told them to shut up.
Yeah, well,
he'd had enough.
I think what's interesting there is that, you know, you've been in arenas with me when we've watched the Asp play, and we've watched his general instructions to the crowd, which he normally spends all of his time trying to get the crowd to be as loud as possible. I'm going to go on record. I think that's the first time in his entire career that Nathan Aspinall has ever tried to quiet a crowd down, because he's generally doing the complete opposite. He's generally trying to get them up to be as loud as he can. I think that's definitely a first from Nathan tonight.
I've been informed that Nathan Aspinall offers even more in his interview. So, as with all the interviews, they are available on our YouTube channel. So go over and have a look. Not sure if the Asp one's up just yet, but the other 3 over. So once we are done on the Fallout bar, please, the Asp one is up. I'm seeing in the background. All 4 are up. But don't worry, you don't want to go over there just yet, because you want to stay and hear Mystic Dan's predictions of what's gonna happen tomorrow.
Mr. Dan, who admittedly is none for 4 after last night's predictions. I managed to I was thinking to myself, I might not get all the scores right, but at least I'll get like some of the picks right. Like out of 4 picks. No, 0 for 4 tonight. I am everybody I picked got beat. So I apologise in advance to everyone tomorrow.
You just knew I was coming on the show and you're trying to make me feel better. It's normally you'll know this. Just before we do move on to tomorrow's predictions and look at the games tomorrow, I've got the order of play in front of me, which has just not long been released. Just before we delve into that, Danny Noppert, so with a lot of the talk today have been about Aspinall, how he got into that. It's been a very, very good year for Noppert. Not to take it away, yes, he hasn't got as far as he would like to in the Grand Prix. Still a lot of opportunities for him. If you was looking at his 2022 so far, I don't want to enter the conversations about Premier League because they'll be ongoing for the next couple of months. But looking at his year so far over these 10 months, successful, very successful year for Noppert, would you say?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just think, if you'd have given him if you had said to him at the beginning of the year, look, this is the 12, in 12 months' time, you'll be inside the top 10, you'll be ranked 9th in the world, and you'll have won a major. Like the fact that, and again, like I can't, I get deeply frustrated with the Premier League discussion and the all the politics nonsense that goes in it. I have a really clear view on it, and now isn't the time.
Yeah.
But I just think if you're at a point where you can say, I think I need to be in the conversation, you've had a bloody good year. Like if you like that, there's the key to of having a good year in darts. Whether you get in that Premier League or not, if you can, without everyone in the room laughing at you, say, I think I deserve a spot, and everyone has to go, maybe. Like you've had a good year, haven't you? Like you're in that, and I think there's a really basic, sort of measure on where I think, and again, I just think, if you'd have offered him it a year ago, I talk sometimes a lot of, I'm a Newcastle fan. If someone had offered me only one defeat and 7th a year ago, I'd have went, oh, give us that. Yes, absolutely. And I think the same thing for Noppert, offer him 9th in the world with a major under his belt, and he can save the word Premier League without the room laughing at him. Like, yeah, that's a good year.
And then just one more on Noppert. That's with 10 months of the year done. We have got the biggest 2 months of the year coming up. His aims for these 2 months, do you think he needs to be putting himself back into the last 4 as a minimum in either the Slam Players or Worlds to then maintain that momentum going into 2023? Or do you think he's already done enough to still have that?
I think it depends what we mean by momentum. I think if, and again, and I don't want to get into it. I think if he wants to be in the Premier League conversation, he's got to go deep in at least one, maybe both.
Of Slam Players or Worlds, one of those, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's got to go deep. He's got to go really deep. In maybe a couple. If he goes deep in the Slam and the Players, he might get away with it at the Worlds. But I think he's got to go deep in the Worlds and one other. That's where I think he's at. And I don't think that's for him to have had a good year and move up the rankings. I just think that is if we're just exclusively talking about momentum that will take it to the Premier League. I think he needs quarters, semis at the Worlds and a really deep run, semis/final at one of the other two.
And then just moving on to the As before we go on to the predictions. Big win for Nathan Aspinall tonight. He was already speaking earlier on in the week about World Series events, and it falls into that Luke Humphries conversation of talking about events that are months and months away instead of concentrating on where we are today. But he's backing it up with results, as he has done today. But one thing he's done today is he's bit at the crowd, and we saw Gerwyn Price to this 12 months ago. And as the tournament went on, that had an impact on Desi. Do you think the same for Nathan Aspinall, or do you think he's already built up enough of a fan base to make sure he's back to them tomorrow night?
I really don't know. I think he's an interesting one, Nathan, because I've never been in a room watching darts where Nathan Aspinall was playing, where Nathan didn't have a big lump of the crowd behind him. Even when he was getting some off the crowd, he's always got a big lump of the crowd, behind him. There are people singing his name. There are people singing his name at darts matches when he's not playing. Like he's got that much of a following. And I don't know whether I think if he can focus on that and shut some of the other stuff out and and not concentrate on it and play his game, then I don't think it'll get on him like it does Gezi. Because when the crowd get a Gezi, it is completely like it's everyone. It's everyone. It's everyone but the referee that's getting at him, isn't it? It's not. It's the full lot.
What we tend to see, and I know the chat room has been very vocal this evening on the fans, and we do see the fans being more vocal as the night goes on, and this links perfectly into the predictions tomorrow. What we don't see tomorrow is Nathan Aspinall up first. He will be taking on Martin Lukeman in the first game. As we move on to predictions, I'm guessing I'll be able to tell by your prediction in this one if being on first plays into the Asps' favour. Over to you, Dan. Remember, Dan knocked 0 out of 4 yesterday. As Dob has reminded me in the chat room, you've also mentioned it.
I owned it straight away, mate. I'll not hide behind it. Like I'll not give anyone else the chance to grass me up. I'm like, these things are recorded. Like I'm done. It's public record.
Yeah, they're in the archive. They're in the archive, but they are watched back by Dob. I'm telling you.
Absolutely.
Over to you then, mate. Nathan Aspinall, Martin Lukeman, opener tomorrow night.
Do you know what? I can't resist. I honestly can't resist. Martin Lukeman 3-2. Just can't resist. I think.
In the chat room as well while Dan's explaining why he's done for the underdog once more.
I think so. Like Lukeman coming out tonight, and he fooled me. Like completely fooled me. Like looked like happy to be there. Like against a proper switched on Ross Smith, and it turns out that maybe I had him all wrong, and he's just ultra relaxed, and like we were talking about, that just the structure of that game where early in the night, it's early doors, like the crowd isn't as vocal, there's not going to be as much in terms of everyone giving it Nathan Aspinall songs looping around and everything else. Lukeman, if he is ultra relaxed and he's got the game to beat him, he's definitely got the game. I think of the two, he's. I don't want to say he's in better form this week, but he's. I think he's in a better position, like darts wise and mentally, for tomorrow. Nathan Aspinall on paper is the better darts player, like he just is. And if Nathan brings his A game, he'll beat him probably 3-0. Well, I'm not convinced that's what's going to happen, and my prediction is Lukeman 3-2.
I am finding this one difficult. I think Asp was alluded to, it's taken a lot out of him tonight. And I think being on second or third is in that bit more time, going on first. I think Asp comes through it. I fancied Martin to do well this week, but I think his race to be run tomorrow in a tight affair. 3-1 the Asp, but 3-2 predominantly those sets will go to that last leg. And I just think that Asp will see through it as a 3-2. Then we move on to the current world number one, as he still is until the rankings update on Monday, unless he goes on and wins it and Peter doesn't read the final. He's Gerwyn Price versus Madders. Surprise quarterfinalist Madders Razma. Where you down with this one, Dan?
I can't do anything other than Gezi Price 3-0. I just think it's levels, and I think he's hit a level at the back end of today, and he's got a bit of a head of steam on him. I think he's going to come out tomorrow and really kick in. I think he'll be excited about playing Razma, because whilst we've seen some great stuff, and from Razma, and we know he's a top player, I think Gezi Price is going to think of that as a way to really, really build his game and get himself where he needs to be to go into those semi-finals and final and build his form to where he wants it to be. I just think he's going to completely come out and go bonkers.
A few in there though in 3-1 Price. Also, Jamie's doing 3-1 Razma. I love someone down for the underdog. However, I do think Price will be too strong.
Big call.
I do see Razma getting one though. I do see it being one apiece. Not to the same levels he's done tonight with those last two sets, but I see it being one apiece probably after two, and then Desi just having that extra.
Make for a better game. I'd love to see it happen. I think it'd make for a better game. I'm not convinced that Gezi will allow it.
These two can go either way, these two names for me. Peter Wright versus Dimitri van den Berg. We saw the sort of the nice story of Talvid. We saw them arguing at the match play. We now see him in Leicester, though, head-to-head. Where does this one now, Dan?
Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. That's what we've got, like the master and the apprentice. Peter Wright, 3-1. I big fans of both of them, good players. Like, either one of them can beat the other. Dimmy, he is hot and cold. When he's on, it's a very, very lovely thing to watch. He's a superb player, but Peter is Peter Wright, and he is as good as anybody in the world at playing darts, and he's looked good this week. And I might change that depending on the first dart hitting the board, and if it's something completely bonkers, like if it looks like it's been whittled on the afternoon, he's knocked them up himself. I don't know what he's going to throw, but if he picks a set of darts and if he throws the darts he threw when he was winning those sets the other night, he'll win comfortably. But yeah, 3-1 Peter Wright. I think he'll have too much.
Bit of a Mitch day in the chat room, but one thing that I'm going to allude to before I did my prediction, Jamie Drummer, if your night happens, we'll be on the fallout bar by 10 o'clock. Because I'm sure he went 3-0 Asp, 3-0, 3-1 Rasmus, 3-1, 3-0 Dimmy.
Not only that, but if he has his, not only that, but if he's on BoyleSports and has his 50 pence on it, he'd probably be retiring at about 73,000 to 1, I think. And it's
yeah, especially those the underdog and the manner of the victory. A few 3-0 Peter Wright, 3-2 Peter Wright. I'm with you on this one. I can see Peter Wright getting the better of him this time, getting his revenge for the match play. I see it being fairly one-sided in the sense of not... I said 3-1 and Lukeman will take Asp close because the sets will be close. But I actually see Peter Wright winning this one 3-1, but in a more convincing manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely.
It's been a bit more one-sided.
Like set players, dead odds, like it's strange. But yeah,
that may be more of a 2-0 Peter Wright. Dimmy then gets one back, bit of a full storm, and then Peter Wright gets over the line. But I'm with you that I'm not too fussed about what the first dart is that hits the board. I'm more worried what hits the board in the second leg and the second set. Because it's the changes for Peter Wright. And then just moving on, as we are doing late into tonight, Michael van Derwin versus Hollywood, Chris Dobie.
Head or heart this for me, mate. If Chris Dobie wins that tomorrow, there'll be pints and tables turned all over the place in my local pub tomorrow night. Like I will be riotous tomorrow in the Boozer if Chris Dobie wins that match. And as much as I will be supporting Bedlington Zone tomorrow evening, my prediction is Michael van Gerwen 3-1.
We all know why your prediction's Michael van Gerwen 3-1 because you got 4 runs yesterday, Dan. We're not silly. We're not silly at all. We know why you've done that.
Yeah, you've worked me out straight away. Like I can't backdoor. I can't. Not the look I've had this week. I can't be cheering for him and predict him as well, can I? No, I do think I believe you me. I will be absolutely jumping all over the place tomorrow if Chris Dobie beats Van Gerwen and gets through. But just based on where I think Michael's game is at the minute, and where I think Chris's game is at the moment. I just think Michael will have too much for him, and it'll disappoint me to watch it, but I do think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, I'm sort of in a position now that I expect to see Price, Wright, and then Michael van Derwin all in that quarterfinal, all in that semi-final, and in current form, there's no surprise that the three of them are. However, you don't expect Price to go out tomorrow night. Wright and MVG are completely different. Dobie starting that game is crucial, but I just think MVG can find that little spur, that momentum, and just reel off. And I know set play is different to that lead play, but Mike van Derwin can then run off 7-8 leads on the spin.
And this is
format that's so short.
My sort of prediction is we'll get to. I think we'll probably get 1-1. Is what I think. Is what I think we'll get. It'll tie up at 1-1. and then Michael will do what Gezi did tonight, and he'll just hit a level that Chris, like on his best day, might get to, and he might get there and he might match it. But I just think Michael will. I think if Chris winning a set could be dangerous for him, because I think when Chris wins a set, it'll just spur Michael to get through the gears and move on and kick on away.
We'll just go for one more just before we shoot off, Dan, and it is a prediction. So it's a question from Tommy in the chat room. I went yes with this at the start of the week, and I'm going to stick with it, especially with the players who are left in. Do you think we will see a 9-darter in this tournament? We are over halfway through it now.
No, I don't think so. I think if we had it done, we'd have seen it by now. I think just law of averages, odds, the amount of people throwing darts at different doubles, and I know we've got some left in the tournament that will be going for that double top off and giving themselves the chance. Again, a bit like Dolby winning. Like, I'll be turning tables over in the pub if it happens. I'll be over the moon, but I'm not convinced it will.
I'm down for a Price MVG final, and it happens in that final.
Ooh,
because I'm adamant that one is coming. Just before we shoot off, as always, huge thank you to BoyleSports for their continued support this week. On our online darts, onlinedarts.com, you will have the preview tomorrow. You will have recommended bets, and go over to BoyleSports for all the specials, as I can't be beaten for Price this week. Dan, it has been an absolute pleasure stepping in with Dob and speaking to you on our screen. It's nice to come on as well when someone's got predictions wrong, because normally it's me sat on that chair. Good luck tomorrow with your with supporting Dolby.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm back Saturday, so I'm back on Saturday night. So we'll see what sort of a mood I'm in come Saturday.
I'll be tuning Saturday. Don't you worry. But I know Dob's back in the seat tomorrow. He's had a well-deserved and I'm doing that like that, well-deserved night off. But he'll be back with you tomorrow, and then it'll be Dan and Dob to talk you through the action, what happened in the semi-finals, and ready for the final. Dan, thank you very much for your time this evening. Remember, head over to our YouTube channel now, where all 4 interviews are available, so you can listen to all 4 from the clips that we have showed you this evening. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see you all tomorrow. Good night.